You were able to tell my...
From the schedule that they sent out.
Yeah.
Also, when I saw the email, what did it say? It said allergy alert, no-go zones. Like, I don't know. That could mean maybe not a lot of things, but it wasn't quite as specific enough for me to figure it out. Then I saw the Hollywood. What was it? The Hollywood schedule.
Yeah.
It's pushing. It might not be pushing what the content is, but the topic is.
No creamer today. What are we gonna do?
Ooh, that looks
Sugar-free coffee creamer.
So that means sugar-free coffee.
Start for people read.
Let's sweeten the almonds.
I have one question about this.
I'll be right back.
You know, picture an almond. They're like the almond going.
I like that. That's a bit of light. He said it was like two black kids fighting over women and he drink none. Yeah, I don't drink none. Wait, Nick, you don't drink cereal? And he's like, what do you mean? I use almond milk. He's like, what do you think almond is? It's almond cows. Is it ready yet? Is it ready yet?
It's going to take like a half hour.
Underneath the cup, on the black band on the bottom, there's a light. It's not on. When it goes on, it's red.
Can I just drink
I spent a lot of years in the machine. Nothing goes through that.
Yeah, you have two granddaughters, and at least one managed to go through about once or conversation.
In fact, when I was teaching the 4th grade,
abortion.
so far now, we had grades.
What exactly is your complaint?
Wait, no, I'm just curious, like, how does it come out different when it's a machine that's automated the whole
Yes.
Depends on when the cup was passed.
I'm trying it. I want to see if they still taste the same.
Okay, good morning. I'd like to thank everybody for coming. Thank everybody for pitching in for different things with Harvey's continued absence. I hope to see him back soon. And I'd like to thank people coming from far and wide. So today's share is entitled Allergy Alerts, No-Go Zones. And in general, people have perspective of history. You could tell me what you think. But I think probably in the world today is a greater awareness of allergies than ever before. On many products, at least here in America, you'll see printed allergy information. If a product contains different items that might be sensitive, hypersensitive people, milk, soy, nuts, peanuts in particular, you'll see information a lot of times on products now. And I believe that's because that there's a growing amount of people across the country, probably across the world, that have issues with allergies. And unfortunately, those issues could be even deadly. A person has anaphylactic reaction to something that they're allergic to. Their lungs, the throat could close up, and a very dangerous situation. Nowadays, there are many people that carry EpiPens I believe every Hatzalah member has in his bag EpiPens, where in case a person needs immediate medical attention, you could just stab them with this needle. Okay. You have to go to the hospital afterwards, but it can really save a person's life. So I believe there's a lot to talk halachically about allergies and the general society's role in preventing people from having these adverse reactions. Now, this particular topic strikes a personal chord for me. I'll tell you why. So, Alan, imagine you're a do-gooder. Story happened to me almost 20 years ago. I made my first shidduch. Those in the family, and many people know the story well. I made my first shidduch. Josh, I was flying high. I was with a friend of mine, with a chavrusa of mine, sister-in-law. Nice, classic yeshiva shidduch. I was going to the wedding not just as a friend, but also as the shadchan. It's all exciting. Of course, you show up early, go to the wedding. I was in a nice place, a nice mafia-owned wedding hall, Huntington, Long Island, Huntington Townhouse. I don't think it exists anymore. Great. So I'm there. I'm by the shmorg. One point in the shmorg, I see they have a platter full of deli. And right next to it, they have another platter. Looked like very nice pastrami. Very nice. Didn't look like so much fat. Pinkish, reddish tinge with the nice black peppered sides. Okay. So I had a piece of it. Didn't taste as good as I expected, but whatever. A little while later, not too long after, I'm standing by the chuppah and struggling breathing a little bit. Now, I had asthma, so I had an inhaler. When I lived in New York, I had an inhaler, so I puffed it. I remember feeling like it didn't do anything. My good friend, or Moshe Bernstein, was standing next to me. He's like, Yaakov, your face is all red. I looked in one of the 1,000 mirrors, right next to me. Yeah, my face is actually all red. And I felt my throat closing. I realized something was wrong. This is in the middle of the chuppah. So I went the opposite way down the aisle. I was lucky, just then and there, I ran into my mother-in-law. My in-laws are at the wedding, and I told her that I don't feel well. I feel like I can't breathe. So being a good mother-in-law, she actually took that to heart. She didn't kick me when I'm down. And, we tried to get help. In Huntington, there was no Hatzalah. There were a couple people at the wedding, but this is 20 years ago. No one was carrying EpiPens. A couple doctors, but no one had it. Just like any other guest, they couldn't really do anything. So that eventually, wasn't so quick, eventually they called 911, which eventually also showed up. Just in the nick of time, they put me on a stretcher. They're rolling me out as the chassan and kalo on the way back from the chuppah. I was going one way, they were going the other. In the ambulance, they gave me epinephrine shot, took me to the hospital, and okay, you had some major anaphylactic allergic reaction, go get tested. That was the send home instructions. So I went tested, tested. Turns out I'm highly allergic to fish. I've eaten a little fish when I was a kid, didn't like it. I didn't like filter fish back in Brooklyn. But it turns out I was heavily allergic to fish. That piece of what I thought was pastrami was some fancy tuna. I was about to get, kashrus wise, it should not have been anywhere near the meat.
Can't control himself.
Huh?
Can't control himself.
Exactly. But that's for another share. And, okay, I found out I'm highly allergic to fish. In retrospect, that was an eye-opener. Probably like 4 to 6 months earlier, I had a slight allergic reaction. And we didn't know what it was. It was one Motzi Shabbos. Now that particular week, I went to my local doctor, which unfortunately wasn't so great. And I wasn't feeling well. He diagnosed me that I have strep. I don't get strep. It was very strange. So he put me on Z-Pack, which is a very common med. Turns out, right, Motzi Shabbos, wasn't doing anything. It was like after Purim, and I had some like leftover shalchmon, some gummy bears. And a little while later, I have some like allergic reaction. I end up in the ER. So in the ER, they asked me, what do you eat anything? I'm like, gummy bears. They laugh. And they said, you on any medication? I say, Z-Pack. I said, oh, it's very unlikely people are allergic to that, but you must be the one who's allergic. So fine. I said, oh, okay. Next time, they think it turns out I didn't have strep. Okay, they put me on it anyway. But in retrospect, what I was allergic to was those gummy bears. Because kosher gummy bears have fish gelatin. That little bit of fish gelatin was what did it. And, okay, Baruch Hashem, I know now I stay away from fish. I stay away from anything of cross-contamination with fish. I stay away from omega-3s. I stay away from one offshoot, one Tropicana orange juice is one that's made with fish oil. It has an OKF on it. That's another story. When you're in Pesach, I almost had it because someone thought it was OKP. They didn't realize it was an OKF.
I've seen people have nervous breakdowns.
So what I would like to talk about today is, let's go to a peanut allergy. Let's start with that. Someone who has a peanut allergy, and will go to the extreme, they have an airborne peanut allergy. So they can't be in an environment where people are eating peanuts. Can a school, can a shul, should a school make a no-go zone? Should a shul make a policy, no peanuts? A school make a policy, no bamba? Bamba, for sure in Israel, is one of the most favorite snacks. Here in America, depends how much you have to pay per bag, but it's also quite, an exciting snack. So can you say no bamba? What about those old peanut chews? Right? Goldbergs. So at a Kiddush, at a Shalom Zacher, at an Oneg, there are infinite, we know Jews and food go together. Right? I don't know, do we have any peanut glazed, donuts?
That's a good idea.
Yeah, peanut butter glazed. Who knows? Right? Reese's.
Cream does make it.
So, can one insist on these ideas of having no-go zones, of having peanut-free places? For me, it'll need to be fish-free. But okay, let's start with peanuts. So, I believe the answer to this question, and we'll see, not such a simple answer. And I believe that an answer to this question could be found in the Gemara in Bava Basra. The Gemara talks about, I'm reading from the Mishnah, it's top Maramakum on the page. Marchikin es a ilon min abar, you have to separate a tree from a pit. Esr v'chamesh amma, 25 amos. V'cherev v'shikma, with bigger trees, with larger roots. Chamishim amma. Why are you separating these trees from a pit? Because the fear is the roots of a tree are going to go into your neighbor's backyard, and he has a pit, he has a primitive pool, and your roots are going to go across the borderline into his pool area and destroy his pool. So therefore, if you're going to plant a tree, you have to plant that tree 25 amos away from the border, away from where the guy keeps his pool, so that you shouldn't go and damage his pool. And this is a Gemara, this is Hilchos Archakas Ezikin, but if you look in the ordinances of a city, they have all these different rules. What can you put? I want to have different things on the borderline of your property. How far? Where can you put it? So halachically speaking, there's a concept of Chakas Nezikin that you, as the potential damager, have to make sure that your property doesn't damage something that belongs to someone else's property. So I have to distance myself. And this comes up a lot, this actual case of trees and pools. I was learning this within Machanchim Kol. There were so many people that had issues with their neighbors. They have a tree that overlooks their neighbor's pool. Leaves from the tree fall off into the pool, and it does damage. Constantly gets clogged. Their pool guy says, you got to get that tree, cut. And it's tricky. If the tree goes into the other person's property, he actually has rights. The airspace, the tree that goes in my property, I'm actually allowed to trim those branches that go overlook and come into my property.
Yeah, that fruit is yours too.
Yeah. Go pick it. But in the other, even if the tree's on the neighbor's property, it's not on your property, but the stuff is going to blow over there. It potentially could get to these issues. And we'll see. So this is the opinion of the Tanakama of the Rabbanan. If you look at the end of the Mishnah, the last two lines of the Mishnah, Rabbi Yossi Omer, Rabbi Yossi says, Aval Pisha Borko Demas Le'ilam, even where the pool gets there first. Nevertheless, lo yikots, you do not have to cut down that tree. Shezeh chofer b'toch shelo, v'zeh nota b'toch shelo. I planted in my property, you dug in your property, everybody's staying in their lane. It's all okay. Rashi uses the words that Rabbi Yossi has an opposite opinion. Rabbi Yossi holds it's victim beware. When we are dealing with a situation of two neighbors, the Pashut idea, I assume if I've done a poll here, who do you think should move for who? I would think, okay, the aggressor, the person who's doing the damage, he has to move to prevent that damage. Rabbi Yossi has an opposite opinion. He says, no, the victim should move. When you have a challenging situation, one neighbor, another one, even if the victim got there first, still, the obligation to move is not on the mazik, it's on the victim, it's on the nizik. And the nizik would be the one to move.
Move the pool?
Well, his pit, yeah.
But he's putting the pit in. Shouldn't he realize if he puts it too close to the border, he's keeping the neighbor from, put the trees up. He should put it, somewhere where...
Correct. That itself might be part of the rationale. Excellent. Is that anytime you do something, you always have to foresee the potential issues you might have with your neighbor. So even though I'm the victim, but the Torah doesn't give you so easily the victim card, at least according to Rabbi Yossi. He says no, right? You dug it within 25 amos, and if the guy puts a tree there to be trouble, you should be the one to move. That's not so simple.
Keep in mind that you have neighbors that haven't built yet.
Right.
They're going to build something. They're trying to put
Right.
trees in a way that won't be...
Right. And this thing gets tricky, and you could have neighbors, and then the neighbors sell their house, and you have different neighbors. So you always have to perceive, what might happen. And Rabbi Yossi's opinion is the victim beware. The Rabbanan's opinion is the opposite. The mazik beware. If you're the aggressor, if you're the one who's doing the damage, you have to move. Now this is a fundamental dispute, fundamental machlokas between them. Who do you think we paskin like? Who do you think the halacha is like?
Yossi.
Not fair. You saw this? Oh. Who would have you thought before seeing it? I would have thought, my conventional wisdom, I would think the halacha would be like the Rabbanan, the mazik move. If you look 4 lines from the bottom of the page, Rabbi Yossi Amar for Pisha, Baruch Ademas Le'ilom Lohikos, Shizachov B'Dov Shalo, V'Zanot B'Dov Shalo, Amar Rav Yehuda Amar Shmuel, Halacha Kerab Yossi. We paskin like Rabbi Yossi, victim beware, and the victim would be the one to move. And this is a major, major halacha, right? With my tree case, my tree is overlooking my neighbor's pool, and the leaves are falling in there. You know whose problem is? It's his problem.
Does this go the same way as last week?
We were talking about Hezekiah.
This is going the opposite direction.
Excellent point. There's a good amount of rabbinic literature. How do we understand? We talked about a couple of weeks ago the idea of I'm building a 2-story home and overlooking you. That might be different. I'll show in a moment why. It might be different.
We found last week that it was different.
Okay. Amar Rav Ashi, reading the next line in Gemara. Ki avinam bei Rav Kahana. When I was by Rav Kahana, Havi Amrinim, we said, Modi Rabbi Yossi with Giri delay. Rabbi Yossi agrees when it's your arrows. What does that mean? Very interesting idea. Is that what Rabbi Yossi says, the victim beware? That's only in a case where the victim, the mazik, the aggressor, is not damaging right now. For example, you plant a tree. How long is it going to take from the time you plant the tree till those roots reach far out to the 25 amos to the neighbor's property? It's going to take some time. Is the damage happening right now? No. So in such a case where the damage is not immediate, the damage is not direct, there Rabbi Yossi says, victim beware. But what happens where the damage is happening right now in a direct fashion? Then everyone agrees the aggressor is the one who has to move. So therefore, to answer your excellent question, it was asked, we learned a couple of weeks ago about the halachas of Hezekiah, of doing damage by looking at somebody, by seeing someone in a compromised state. For example, I have a 2-story home, and my home overlooks someone else's pool. A real issue. Recently, after I gave that share, I was walking with people, and they're like, "Rabbi, this is the house I was talking about." You know, the issue, and they, if to their credit, they put up high trees to block the windows. Okay. But there I saw some poskim write that Hezekiah could be viewed, pun intended, as direct damage. Because when a person sees, that's gear delay. I'm looking, I'm seeing, assuming the damage is by you feeling uncomfortable, me looking at you, I'm seeing you, doing something private, that's direct damage, that Rabbi Yossi would agree. So that's why we might say, yeah, the person building the house that's going to have the lookout point that will do damage to somebody else, that's considered direct damage. And even Rabbi Yossi would say that you have to move. But what emerges from this Gemara is this very interesting 2 ways to look at it. Do we say the victim should move? Do we say the mazik, the aggressor, should move? It's a machlokas, we paskin, the victim has to move. But if it's a direct damage, then he does.
So
yes.
So it's to uproot this fruit-bearing tree that was planted 30 years ago.
Yes.
Because at the same time, or a couple of years apart, there was a pool being dug and built.
So Josh,
so now
excellent
move
point.
This fruit-bearing tree.
Excellent point.
Unless there's a conflicting halacha that you're not allowed to uproot a fruit tree.
Yes. Well, okay, let's make it not a fruit tree just to make his case a drop easier. But someone just told me, someone actually asked me if I'll give a share about this. You might know about this. It seems 25 years, a long time ago, there was some issue that Miami-Dade
Citrus canker.
Right, cut down all these citrus trees because they thought it had a disease. Turns out it didn't.
Crazy. And
there was a major settlement that was just reached. So People asking me different shilos about that. Okay, yeah, that probably does deserve its own. Oh wow! So there's a lot of discussions about that particular case. Very interesting. But really, the concept of paying for to cut down a tree actually goes back to this Mishnah. This Mishnah says even if they do cut down your tree, there has to be compensation for it. Because the assumption is when you plant a tree, it's an investment, it's going to be there for a long time. And the Mishnah says that if you would cut down the tree, there's a concept of kotzeis v'nos indamim. You cut down the tree, but you have to pay. There has to be some type of compensation. But yes.
I heard why I cut the tree? Like you're not allowed to cut fruit trees because it's a fruit tree, but since it was sick, you're allowed to.
Right, that's a different type of scenario. Yeah, that could be.
The more doesn't say you have to distance, it just you have to cut the roots so it doesn't damage it. So you're not adding.
Right, that's l'chachila. But let's say it was done illegally. So then the halacha is you're allowed to go in there and cut it. Kotzeis.
Why? Why can't you just cut the roots so that's not damaging? Even if it was done.
It's going to grow back, I assume.
So keep cutting. If I keep cutting the roots, why would
Keep on trimming it. Interesting.
Those fruit trees, they didn't have canker, but they were afraid that a mile or 2 miles away there were ones that had canker, and it would
Spread.
getting canker and spreading. So they wanted to have like a safe zone. So they
Wow.
just came and killed all the good trees.
They didn't want to go up north. They
Without a
didn't want
right to.
Wow. Okay, good Florida history here. So in the Gemara we see we're talking about something which is a very clear, tangible damage. But in applying that to peanuts, what exactly, if someone's building a tree, someone's planting a tree, okay, so I could, like you just talked about, there are roots on the ground, that you could touch, you could feel, you could see. An allergy, that's like something that has no mamashas to it. Okay, maybe in the microscope you could see it. Is that the same? But you find it very interestingly in the Gemara talks about potential neighbor issues with smell, which is not tangible, which is not at least feelable, right? A smell going from one property to another is also grounds to potentially make the mazik move his stuff. Noise from sound is also an issue, right? And yeah, they have a lot of discussions. People want to put up a wedding hall down the block from you, right? That means kananahara, night after night, dancing after dancing. So it might be good for the broader community, but as a neighbor, hey, I don't want that in my backyard.
We used to have smoking sections in restaurants.
Oh, I'm going to get to that. So you see the halachas apply to all types of smell, smoke, the like. It also applies to sound. Fine. That's what you see from the Gemara. There's one additional step that we need to discuss, just to bring us to peanuts, is the difference between, though, let's say a peanut allergy and all these other things. All these other things are damages which I would call shava l'chol nefesh. It's damage to anybody. If I have a pool and you're going to rock the foundations of my pool, that's damage. Anyone who has a pool will get that damage. If there's a putrid smell, if there's crazy raucous noise, everyone will be disturbed by that. But here, by where we started, by a peanut allergy, most of the world, it's not a big deal if you open a bag of peanuts. It's only because somebody's sick, someone's a chola, someone who has an allergy, that's a problem. Do I have to worry about damage I'm causing to a sick person? The majority of people are not affected by this. So is that also covered under these laws the Torah has of Archakos Nezikin? And for the Gemara itself, it doesn't sound so simple. All the Gemara's cases, pashtus, are cases where it's something that would affect anybody. So the Shulchan Aruch in Siman Kuf Nun Hey brings a Rivash, tshuva from the Rivash, where the Rivash says that this would apply equally to a chola. And the case he brings is there's a certain amount of noise, which normally is tolerable by people. But the case was someone's wife has major migraines. And for her, even this level of noise is very disturbing. So the Rivash Paskins, that too would be covered by the halachas of Archakas Hazikin. Even though you're an individual, you're not what most people have, but nevertheless, if for you it's bothersome, that's a problem. And the person would have to distance himself, assuming it's a direct damage. They would have to distance such a thing. So if we stopped here, we have a couple more angles. But if we stopped here, it would seem that there is a precedent in halacha, precedent from the Gemara, of this concept that if there's somebody in a shul, somebody in a school that has a peanut allergy. Now let's make one more assumption, which I think is a fair assumption. The moment you open the bag of peanuts, the bag of bamba, that is direct damage. Because when you open it, into the airspace are going the smell, how else to describe it? Right? Yeah, the malchus of those peanuts, and it's affecting people. So that seemingly would be delay, be a direct damage. Even Rabbi Yossi, who normally says victim beware, would agree here that the aggressor, the mazik, has to distance himself, and therefore no one will be allowed to bring peanuts. There should be halachic right for that person to insist nobody brings peanuts into shul, no one brings peanuts into school. He stopped right here. That would be the psak. However, there's a very interesting Chazon Ish. Now, I must preface, the Chazon Ish probably wrote this when he was in Bnei Brak, which is Bamba, capital of the world. But the Chazon Ish was pro-Bamba. What right does the Chazon Ish have to make this? On this Rivash, on this Tshuva, which talks about a chola, he makes a very important qualifications. I'll read it. It's the bottom paragraph of the Chazon Ish. V'nira de'ein divrei rivash o ba'osa davar she'eino ikar dira. Skipping. Avo ma'osa dvarim sherov b'nei adam osim. If you're doing something that most people do, u'pamim tashbishim v'diburim mashmiya kol shemafriya sachola. And their speaking and their noise hurts a sick person. Eino yachal limchos av machol hakodem. They can't protest even if the chol is there first. For Ashlai Odom livnos bayis etzel chaveri. You can build a house near your friend. Malachnes is a olim v'yinukim. You can bring in all your wild, rambunctious kids. Shetzokim b'layla. The babies scream at night. The kids go crazy at night. And the sick person can't prevent that. The person does not have the obligation to leave their home. The Chazon Ish, and this is based on the Gemara on Yeches and Bal Basra. The Gemara says Dira Shani. It's different when it comes to your home. Chazon Ish's example, right? No one would say, right, you move into the apartment building, you're on the second floor. Your kids are running around 24/7. Right? So at first the neighbor takes his broom every so often and bangs, right, on the apartment on top. Your kids are making a ruckus. He says, you guys got to move. Okay, a person like that insists. Even if he's a chola. The Chazon Ish says the answer is no. You cannot insist on a person moving, even though they're making a ruckus, and you're dealing with. So
I mean,
That's a very good question.
Apartment's meant to be used. You can't tell someone to take off your shoes and walk around.
Right.
It's different than someone playing the drums in the apartment.
Right, right. So I want to quote again the exact language of the Chazon Ish. Im osa devarim sherob bnei adam osim, ulapa'amim tashmish diburim mashmiya kol. You're doing something that most people do, and sometimes it makes a loud noise. If the loud noise was constant, that might be different. And if it's off the charts, maybe that's also different. But we're talking about a significant loud noise which is made,
Just
right?
things that are.
The kids are a perfect example. The kids eventually conk out, they sleep, right? So 1 second. So the Chazon Ish says, in such a scenario, halacha would be that you have 100% dispensation to continue doing that. You don't have to move. Because you're allowed to live a normal life in your house. El, you had a question?
Yeah, but what about in the second paragraph of Chafam Beis, the Mishnah says, "Chanash v'chata yochel luchos biyado v'lomelo in yochel lushon mikol hanichas v'kol v'yosef."
Right.
So there's a lot of protests we can't see.
Right. So there, Gufa, the Rivash is actually going on that case. If you look at the Shulchan Aruch, you'll see they actually talk on that case. But for sure, if a person is a chola, so you would think you should go out of your way. But the halacha is, the Chazon Ish says, no. If what you're doing is normal, then you're in the clear. And I saw major poskim extrapolate from here. It's not limited to things you do in your house. Going back to our Bamba Shiloh, they write, they say that, look, it's absolutely normal for kids to have Bamba snacks. So if I'm doing something normal, and okay, granted you're a chola, and granted you have this issue, but you can't ask me to not do something normal. It's normal if you're doing something crazy. I saw a similar shiloh was asked about an immunocompromised person and a person who's anti-vax. They insist on the anti-vaxxer not step foot unless they get vaccinated. So that's different. Anti-vaxxer doing something which is not normal. And you wouldn't be able to come. They could prevent a person like that from coming. But here, eating bamba is different. Eating peanut butter is different. That's normal. That's what kids do. So to ask someone who's doing something normal not to do it for the sake of a person who has an allergy, it's not a simple ask. Pashpshat de paskin, based on this Chazon Ish, that you would not halachically be able to enforce a no peanut zone. Very, very major psak. Now hold on. I'm just watching the clock because I want to do 2 more steps. 2 very important steps. So I saw, I guess now 3 different people. There was a psak, Yashav, and 2 chashav poskim from Chicago, both utilizing this Chazon Ish to say in like a bamba type situation, a peanut butter situation, that you would not be able to insist on such a thing. However, I believe there might be another voice in this psak, and I'm not ready to pass on this because I'm making a diuk. It's not black and white that I found a source that argues. But what I did find, Moshe Feinstein was asked the Shaila years and years ago about smoking. So if you have an environment where people are smoking, and he discusses in the tshuva the idea of secondhand smoke and the danger of that. But Moshe was willing to discuss it on multiple layers, even without the issue of secondhand smoke. Right? I'm not there all the time. I'm there a little bit. Could a person object to people smoking in the environment? And Moshe writes an entire tshuva absolutely clear that yes, 100%, if one person does not like the smell of smoke, they have a right to insist, putting aside health concerns. Just it bothers them. smoke, he have a right to insist that people do not smoke. Rav Moshe writes that black and white in the tshuva. What's very interesting about this is, especially since this tshuva was written 40 years ago, more than 40 years ago, what's the percentages of people smoking? Quite normal. 40 years ago, would you say there's a significant amount of people that are smoking? Would you say that smoking is normal? It's hard to say. It's not. Rav Moshe knew the Metzias. Rav Moshe did not give a heter because, you're doing something normal. It seems to me that this Rav Moshe Feinstein would argue with the Chazon Ish. If all these poskim are basing their conclusion on the Chazon Ish, I believe I found the Rav Moshe Feinstein that argues. He doesn't write it beferish, but from what he doesn't write, I'm able to extrapolate that. Rav Moshe doesn't say anything about a heter to do smoking because it's normal. It sounds like, and really the whole idea of the Chazon Ish is, or what people take from the Chazon Ish is a big step, because it's one thing. The original heter the Gemara talks about is dirashani, is inside your home. The Chazon Ish's case was your kids to make noise inside your apartment. It's another thing to bring down wherever you go. If I'm doing something normal, then I'm okay. Maybe that's a special heter specifically in your home. It's right. Maybe in your home, someone else can't come in and say, you can't smoke. I'm having a party in my house. But the other way, in an office, in a shul, in a school, where to insist on not smoking, I don't know that there is any heter. I'm doing something normal. No, Moshe didn't assume that. So huadin, similarly to peanuts, the peanut allergy, it'll come out according to the way I understand Rav Moshe, is that it will not be a heter because you're doing something normal, and it'll revert back to the issue that you're causing tsar to somebody, and you, the person doing it, have to leave. And you therefore could have insist halachically on no peanut zones and that. Just to finish off one point, and then I'll take all questions. Is even those who say that this is, you can't insist in such a right to have a peanut zone, peanut-free zone, they all would say the right thing to do, even if it's not halachic right from Shulchan Aruch, which I might argue it is, but even if you say it's not a halachic right in Shulchan Aruch, because of Beinam Chavero, because of V'ahavta Re'echa Kamocha, how one Jew should behave to another Jew, you should do everything in your power to be sensitive to such people. And even if it's not halachically mandated to do such a thing, it's probably the right thing to do in most situations. Is if there isn't one individual that has this problem, you have to figure out the way to work around it. You have to figure out a way to help them out. And that's the Jewish way. The Jewish way is always to be concerned for another person. And we should always do everything in our power to be careful to other people's feelings. Rahman Tzan, the person who does have allergies, they're going through a lot. They have to be worried all the time. To take away worry from another Jew, that's a big deal. That's a chashuv thing. And Be'ez Hashem, we should all be healthy and safe, and shouldn't come on to allergy issues, and especially the schus of everybody being careful and worried about another Jew is a wonderful thing for Klal Yisrael. Okay, I'll take questions.
So, I believe that Rav Moshe, there may be another piece that he wanted to usher smoking because he didn't feel smoking was healthy. He knew it was dangerous, but he wouldn't usher it because he also knew that if he did, no one would listen to him. And he would just create another category, another group of Avery.
Right, excellent point. I was talking of a specific tshuva. This is just for the record. It's Igos Moshe Choshe Mishpat Chelik Beis Siman Yud Ches. They have on the back of the sheets. But Rav Moshe has another tshuva when he discusses in general the concept of smoking, which he does write very strongly against it. And he wrote that tshuva years ago, before all of the current, health knowledge of how dangerous smoking is. It's very interesting in this particular tshuva. You read the last line, I put it on there. Rav Moshe writes something he doesn't write by most tshuvas. I'll read it to you. Yedidiv, kol echad ve'echad. My friends, all these people in the kolo, in Shnei Atzadim. Everyone's my friend, he writes. Uvetuach ani, and I'm sure, sheikaimu masha kasafti. You're going to keep what I wrote. Das Torah, this is the absolute das of the Torah. Halacha Brura, this is absolutely clear halacha. The Yisra HaShalom bin HaChaverim V'Chachmei Torah. Rav Moshe writes, I'm sure you're going to keep exactly what I write. He didn't sign off most tshuvas like that. I think, Rabbi Berger, you're 100% right. Smoking is something which is a very personal, especially go back years ago, when the Shur was first being introduced, there were no smoking zones. It was probably Lebedik. It's probably quite a fight. Moshe knew that it's really going to hit people, and he's begging them, please keep what I'm writing. To me, this is clear Torah. So it also gives more punch to the argument that Moshe didn't miss a step on this one. So I think it's a nice deal. But okay, we'll have to reach out to the poskim, see if what they would say. Okay, thank you very, very much, everyone, for coming, everyone for listening. Have a wonderful week.
I remember when Queens put up the sign about no kiwi, strawberry, Snapple, because nobody would have thought of it.
Really?
Where's Debbie Frid? He's allergic to kiwi, I think.
Really?
Either kiwi or the strawberry, but that's how most of us found out. Snapple actually uses real ingredients.
Wow.